Now we are going to discuss the oral cavity. So first see the anatomy. What is the extent of oral cavity? So if you see anteriorly, this is the skin and vermilion border. So anteriorly there is skin and vermilion border. Okay, and what you can see posteriorly, you can see this circumvallate papillae. Clear? And this circumvallate papillae, this is going to represent the junction of anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3 of tongue. So this junction is the posterior boundary. So posterior extent is junction of anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3 of tongue. Clear? This is the posterior extent, and superiorly the junction of hard palate and soft palate. So you can see here, this is the junction of hard palate superiorly, the junction of hard palate and soft palate. Clear? So this is the extent of oral cavity. Now we are going to discuss the important one-liner questions which are asked in relation to carcinoma oral cavity. So what is the most common mutation seen in patients of carcinoma oral cavity? So this is P53. What is the most common histological type of C oral cavity? So obviously it is lined by squamous epithelium. So this is squamous cell carcinoma. And worldwide, what is the most common site of carcinoma oral cavity? So it is tongue followed by lip. And if we are talking about most common site in India, then it is buccal mucosa. Okay, so see the important one-liner questions related to carcinoma oral cavity. So first important point, what's the most common mutation seen in carcinoma oral cavity? And it is P53. Most common mutation in carcinoma oral cavity, P53. Second, what's the most common histological type of carcinoma oral cavity? And this is squamous cell carcinoma. What is the most common site of CA oral cavity worldwide? Most common site worldwide. Okay, and the most common site is tongue followed by lip. So this is tongue followed by lip. And see the twist in question. What is the most common site of carcinoma oral cavity in India? Okay, so in India it is buccal mucosa followed by anterior tongue followed by lower alveolus. So it is buccal mucosa followed by anterior tongue followed by lower alveolus. Clear? Lower alveolus. Okay, now see what is the most common pattern of spread. So generally in carcinoma oral cavity you will find that there is local extension and there is lymphatic spread. Hematogenous spread is also seen in C oral cavity, and if there is hematogenous spread, what is the most common site of metastasis? It is lungs. Okay, so another important point, what's the most common pattern of spread? Clear? And the most common pattern of spread, it is local extension and lymphatic spread. So this is local extension and there is lymphatic spread. Okay, we discussed that there can be hematogenous spread also, and via hematogenous spread there is metastasis. So most common site of metastasis, the most common site of metastasis, and that's the lungs. Clear? Now see, if you see this lower lip, this is the lip. Okay, this is the upper lip and this is the lower lip. Now see here, in upper lip, can you see in center there is philtrum? That's why if you see the lymphatic drainage, the upper lip lymphatic drainage is like this. So the right side goes to right side of lymph nodes and the left goes to left side. But what happens, there is crisscross connection in the lymphatic drainage of lower lip, and because of this crisscross connection, what happens, if the patient is having carcinoma lower lip, there can be involvement of bilateral cervical lymph node. So important question which is asked, that bilateral lymphatic spread is seen in which malignancies? So apart from carcinoma lip, it is also seen in soft palate and supraglottis. And if you remember, when we were discussing penis and urethra, in penis also there is crisscross connection, and because of that there is bilateral lymphatic spread leading to bilateral inguinal lymph node involvement. So very important point, that bilateral lymphatic spread is seen in which malignancies? So bilateral lymphatic spread is seen in which malignancies? First, carcinoma lower lip. So it is seen in lower lip, soft palate, supraglottis. So this is in relation to oral cavity. Okay, and what else? We discussed carcinoma penis. So in these malignancies, there is bilateral lymphatic spread. So you may find bilateral lymph node involvement. Now see how we are going to make the diagnosis. This is the accessible malignancy of oral cavity. Yes, and how we are going to make the diagnosis? By biopsy. How you take biopsy? Imagine this is the tumor. Generally, the central part of tumor is having necrotic area. So if the central part of tumor is having necrotic area, what? We have to take biopsy from the edge. So investigation of choice for diagnosis is biopsy. What kind of biopsy? It's the edge biopsy. Investigation of choice for diagnosis, it's the edge biopsy. One second, we discussed that in head and neck and in pelvis there is overcrowding of structures, soft tissues, and that's why in staging of head and neck malignancies and pelvic malignancies, what is the investigation of choice? So investigation of choice for staging of head and neck malignancies and pelvic malignancies is MRI. Very important point here. So another important point, investigation of choice for staging of head and neck malignancies. Okay, and that's what MRI. So you have to read the question carefully, whether investigation is asked related to diagnosis or staging. Now see, whenever there is some tumor, in majority of cases, if it is low grade, if it is resectable, we go for wide local excision, and after wide local excision there is a defect, so we have to close that defect with the flap. So whenever there is head and neck reconstruction, if there is defect in head and neck region and we have to reconstruct it with flap, what is the most commonly used flap for reconstruction in head and neck? And it is PMMC flap. What is the full form? Pectoralis major myocutaneous flap. So important question, what's the most common flap used in head and neck reconstruction? Most commonly used flap used in head and neck reconstruction. Clear? And this is PMMC flap, pectoralis major myocutaneous flap, and it is based on pectoral branches of thoracoacromial vessels. This is also one important question. So it is based on pectoral branches of thoracoacromial vessels. Thoracoacromial vessels. Simple. So these are important one-liner questions asked in relation to carcinoma oral cavity. Now we are going to discuss the risk factors for carcinoma oral cavity. So see the risk factors for carcinoma oral cavity. So So one of the most important risk factor is what? Tobacco. Clear? Alcohol. Certain people, they are having the habit of betel chewing or areca nut chewing. So that also increases the risk factor. Gutka, pan masala, all these are the risk factors. Some patients are having sharp jack tooth. Because of this sharp jack tooth, it is going to lead to ulcer in the tongue, and because of this chronic irritation, there is increased risk of carcinoma oral cavity. Now see, this Plummer-Vinson syndrome, it is going to increase the risk of three malignancies. One, oral cavity. Second, hypopharynx. And third, esophagus. So apart from oral cavity, it is going to increase the risk of hypopharynx, and it also increases the risk of carcinoma esophagus. We will discuss this in detail. The other risk factors are ill-fitting dentures if the patient is having syphilitic glossitis. You know, these two viruses are going to increase the risk of squamous cell carcinoma. Which one? One is human papilloma virus and the second is Epstein-Barr virus infection. If there is poor nutrition, zinc deficiency, vitamin A deficiency, the patients are very prone to develop C oral cavity. And this question was asked in a latest exam, that vitamin A deficiency increases the risk of carcinoma oral cavity. You have to remember. This was asked in a latest exam. Now see, there are conditions with malignant transformation. So there are high risk lesions, medium risk lesions and low risk lesions which are associated with carcinoma oral cavity. So see, what is this group? Conditions associated with malignant transformation. So what are the high risk lesions? What are the medium risk lesions? High risk lesions, medium risk lesions and low risk lesions. Clear? This is another important question because what they do in exams, they give 3 high risk lesions and 1 medium risk or low risk lesion, and then they ask which of the following is not a high risk lesion for malignant transformation in carcinoma oral cavity. So see the list: erythroplakia, speckled erythroplakia and chronic hyperplastic candidiasis. All these are high risk lesions for malignant transformation. There is a very important question which is frequently asked in relation to CA oral cavity. They give you 3 conditions. 1, leukoplakia. 2, erythroplakia. And 3, speckled erythroplakia. And then the question is asked, which one is having maximum risk of malignancy? So among leukoplakia, erythroplakia and speckled erythroplakia, this one is having maximum risk. Okay, and leukoplakia is having lowest risk. Clear? So these are the high risk lesions. The medium risk lesions are oral submucous fibrosis. So you must be knowing that in oral submucous fibrosis there is formation of fibrous band within the submucosa, and typically it is seen in Asian population in females who are having the habit of chewing betel nut for long duration. And the second is syphilitic glossitis. Third is Plummer-Vinson syndrome. See what are the low risk lesions. So oral lichen planus, DLE means discoid lupus erythematosus and discoid keratosis congenita. These are the low risk lesions. So you have to remember this list because this is frequently asked. Now see these 2 images and tell me what is the diagnosis on the basis of this appearance. So here you can see there is whitish patch or whitish plaque. So presence of whitish patch or whitish plaque. So what is this? This is leukoplakia. And in this picture you can see there is reddish mucosal patch or plaque, and this is reddish, so this is erythroplakia. So first is leukoplakia and the second is erythroplakia. This is very, very important as frequently. Let's see what are the differences. So what are the differences between leukoplakia and erythroplakia? Okay, now see what is leukoplakia. Leuko means whitish. So here the patient is having whitish patch or plaque that cannot be rubbed off, and it cannot be given another diagnostic name. So what is leukoplakia? Here patient is having whitish patch or plaque that cannot be rubbed off and it cannot be given any other diagnostic name. And in erythroplakia, you saw that here patient is having reddish mucosal patch or plaque. So there is reddish mucosal patch or plaque. Clear? One by one we are going to discuss. If we are talking about the incidence, which one is more common, leukoplakia or erythroplakia? So leukoplakia is more common. And if you are talking about the incidence of malignancy, erythroplakia is having higher risk of malignancy. Generally, what are the common sites of erythroplakia? So see the sites, common sites. So it is seen in soft palate, tonsillar pillar. So the common sites are soft palate and tonsillar pillar. Okay, if we see the incidence, leukoplakia, this is more common, and erythroplakia, this is less common. It's less common, but if we compare the risk of malignancy, it is having increased risk of malignancy as compared to leukoplakia. So as compared to leukoplakia, there is increased risk of malignancy in erythroplakia. Here, relatively, there is low risk. Okay. Now see what are the risk factors for leukoplakia. So the people who are smokers, taking alcohol, these patients are having increased risk. If the patient is having ill-fitting dentures or jagged tooth, in those cases also there is increased incidence of leukoplakia. So see the risk factors. Risk factors for leukoplakia. So smoking, alcohol, ill-fitting dentures and jagged tooth. All these are going to increase the risk. Okay. Very important finding on pathology. Generally, the patients who are having erythroplakia, on biopsy there is severe cellular dysplasia. So what is the important pathological feature? There is severe cellular dysplasia, and because of this severe cellular dysplasia, what happens? There is increased risk of malignancy. So this is going to increase the risk of malignancy. On which investigation you can find severe cellular dysplasia? So you can find this on biopsy. So if patient is having erythroplakia, obviously we have to go for the biopsy, and there is risk of malignancy. That's why in all cases we have to go for surgical excision. So how we make the diagnosis? So it is diagnosed by biopsy. And what's the management? Since there is increased risk of malignancy, we go for surgical excision. Okay, but see what happens in leukoplakia. The key pathological features are hyperkeratosis, parakeratosis. Patients are having acanthosis. This is asked in pathology. Okay, so key pathological features are hyperkeratosis. There is parakeratosis and acanthosis. Clear? So hyperkeratosis, parakeratosis, acanthosis. Again, how we are going to make the diagnosis? So the diagnosis is made by biopsy. Clear? And how we are going to treat? Okay, so generally, first we are going to encourage patient to stop smoking and alcohol. So if patient is having leukoplakia, stop smoking and alcohol. If the patient is having ill-fitting dentures, jagged tooth, so what we are going to do? Treat the underlying cause. Clear? So treatment of underlying cause. If patient is having ill-fitting dentures, jagged tooth. But if patient is having moderate to severe dysplasia, so when there is dysplasia, we have to go for surgical excision. So the management: stop smoking, alcohol, treat the underlying cause. And if patient is having moderate to severe dysplasia, so in this case surgical excision is done. we go for surgical excision. Clear? So this is how we manage erythroplakia, leukoplakia, and these are the important differences. Now third situation, which is very important and having increased risk of malignancy, known as speckled erythroplakia. What are the other names? Speckled leukoplakia, and it is also known as erythroleukoplakia. Now see this diagram. Here you can notice that there is erythematous base. Clear? And you can notice that what? There is whitish patch also. Clear? So there is presence of both what? Whitish patch developing on erythematous base, or oral erythroplakia is intermingled with whitish plaque. So that's why it is known as, since it is containing both erythroplakia, leukoplakia, it is known as speckled erythroplakia, speckled leukoplakia, or erythroleukoplakia. So what you can see here, that leukoplakia arises on erythematous base, or you can see there is oral erythroplakia intermingled with whitish plaque or patch. And we discussed there is maximum risk of malignancy in speckled erythroplakia, maximum risk, followed by erythroplakia, followed by leukoplakia. Clear? So these are important points related to leukoplakia and erythroplakia. Now we are going to discuss Plummer-Vinson syndrome. Plummer-Vinson syndrome. And what are the other names of Plummer-Vinson syndrome? It is also known as Patterson-Brown-Kelly syndrome, also known as sideropenic dysphagia. So the other names, it is also known as Patterson-Brown-Kelly syndrome, also known as sideropenic dysphagia. So what happens? These patients are having sideropenic, means iron deficiency anemia, and these patients have dysphagia. Clear? Generally it is more common in middle-aged edentulous females. So generally more common in middle-aged edentulous females, and it is going to increase the risk of squamous cell carcinoma of oral cavity, hypopharynx, and esophagus. So it increases the risk of squamous cell carcinoma of oral cavity, hypopharynx, and esophagus. Clear? The features, the clinical manifestations which are associated with Plummer-Vinson syndrome are frequently asked. So see, what are the important features associated with Plummer-Vinson syndrome? So important features. It is asked in medicine, surgery, ENT. So it is characterized by splenomegaly. There is achlorhydria, dysphagia. Why there is dysphagia? This question was asked because these patients are having upper esophageal web. So what's the cause? There is upper esophageal web. Okay. And why it is known as sideropenic dysphagia? Because you can see patient is having chronic iron deficiency anemia and dysphagia. So that's why it is known as sideropenic dysphagia. Clear? So there is atrophic oral mucosa also, or there is glossitis and quilonychia. What happens in quilonychia? There is brittle spoon-shaped fingernails. So these are the associations. How to remember the mnemonic is, can you see? SAD, CA, quile. So how to remember? SAD, CA, quile. Clear? So this is splenomegaly, achlorhydria, dysphagia, chronic iron deficiency anemia, atrophic oral mucosa or glossitis, and there is quilonychia. Now see this picture and tell the diagnosis. Can you see this patient is having difficulty in opening the mouth? So what? There is restricted mouth opening. Second thing, what you can see, that there is presence of extensive fibrosis. What happens? Can you see? Whitish areas. So this condition is typically seen in Asian population, more common in females, and this is oral submucous fibrosis. So what's the name of this condition? This is oral submucous fibrosis. Here you can see the term is self-explanatory. Submucous fibrosis. So problem in the oral cavity, there is presence of fibrous band. So there is presence of fibrous band in the oral cavity in which particular layer? Submucosa. And because of this extensive fibrosis, this patient is not able to open the mouth completely. So there is restricted opening of mouth. Second, there is restricted tongue movement also. And generally these patients are females who have the habit of chewing betel nut for longer duration. They used to keep the betel nut in the mouth and they keep chewing that betel nut. Okay, so what is oral submucous fibrosis? The term is self-explanatory. It is characterized by formation of fibrous band. Submucous fibrosis. So there is formation of fibrous band in which layer? Submucosa. And because of this fibrous band, what's the problem? There is restricted opening of mouth. So restricted mouth opening, one problem, and restricted tongue movement. Okay, now imagine a condition of a female who is having restricted mouth opening and restricted tongue movement. You can understand the pain. So restricted mouth opening and restricted tongue movement. Clear? So it is typically seen in Asian population, more common in females who are having the habit of chewing areca nut. So what is the risk factor? Areca nut. Clear? Now the problem, there is presence of fibrous band. So how you can avoid the fibrosis? Anywhere or any condition in which there is excessive fibrosis, generally we give intralesional injection of steroids. Which particular agent? Triamcinolone. So here also we go for intralesional injection of triamcinolone. The alternative treatment is you can excise the fibrous bands, you can excise these fibrous area, and we can go for grafting. So what's the management of submucous fibrosis? Management. First option is intralesional injection of steroids. And which particular agent generally we inject is the triamcinolone. Clear? And the alternative treatment is we can go for surgical excision with grafting. Clear? So we can go for surgical excision with grafting. So this is how we manage oral submucous fibrosis. Now see two examples. If you see tobacco or smoking, it's a risk factor for most of the malignancies of aerodigestive tract. So what? Tobacco is a common risk factor for most of aerodigestive tract malignancies. One example. Second example, if patient is a smoker, so smoking is a risk factor for renal cell carcinoma, carcinoma renal pelvis, ureteric malignancies, and carcinoma bladder. So in the whole genitourinary tract, what you noticed that smoking is going to increase the risk of malignancy in the whole field. So what's the problem? If there is diffuse and chronic exposure of a carcinogenic substance in the whole field, there is increased risk of malignancy in the whole field, and this concept is known as field cancerization. So what is field cancerization? Very, very important concept. Field cancerization. Clear? So in this case, if there is diffuse and chronic exposure, diffuse and chronic exposure of carcinogenic substance, so what happens? There is widespread changes in the surface epithelium. So if there is widespread change, so there are widespread changes in surface epithelium. Okay, and because of that, what's the problem? These patients are prone to develop multiple tumors. So what happens? These patients are prone to develop multiple tumors, and in this case there are separate tumor at different sites. Two situations are there. If patients are having multiple tumors and the second tumor was diagnosed within 6 months of diagnosis of first tumor, this is known as synchronous tumor. And if the second tumor was diagnosed after 6 months of diagnosis of first tumor, this is known as metachronous. So because of these changes, it can lead to separate tumors at different sites. Separate tumors at different sites in the whole field. Clear? And it is further divided into two types. It can be synchronous. Synchronous means detected simultaneously or within 6 months. Synchronous or metachronous. And this metachronous, it is detected or diagnosed after 6 months. Clear? So synchronous, detected simultaneously or within 6 months. Simple. And metachronous, this is detected after 6 months. So the second tumor is diagnosed after 6 months of first tumor or primary tumor. So now classical example, so you can see tobacco or alcohol for aerodigestive tract, so it is going to increase the risk of malignancy in aerodigestive tract. And second, we discussed smoking for genitourinary tract. So what are the examples of field cancerization? Very important: tobacco or alcohol, and this is for aerodigestive tract. Clear? So second, we discussed smoking, and this is going to increase the risk of urinary tract malignancy. So smoking, and it's going to increase the risk of urinary tract malignancy. Okay, so this is the concept of field cancerization. Now see, if you have seen a patient of carcinoma oral cavity, generally what is the most common site? Tongue followed by lip. So whenever these patients are coming to us, what they tell us that, sir, I'm having this swelling, or in the tongue they are going to tell us that, sir, this is the ulcer, and generally the duration is more than 3 weeks. So whenever there is swelling or sometimes there is ulcer, these patients have sore tongue. So they give you history of not tolerating hot and spicy food. Second problem, whenever there is local extension of tumor, you can notice that there is swelling of jaw also. If there is involvement of cervical lymph node, what you can notice? You can notice that there is painless lump in the neck also. And certain patients in which there is extensive spread, these patients have difficulty in opening of mouth. That's trismus. So see, what are the clinical features of CA oral cavity? Carcinoma oral cavity. Okay. What are the clinical features? Clinical features. So these patients come to us with persistent swelling or ulcer. General duration is more than 3 weeks. There is sore tongue. They give the history of not tolerating hot and spicy food. There is difficulty in swallowing. Why there is jaw or facial swelling? Whenever there is local extension of tumor. Because of local extension of tumor. And when there is involvement of cervical lymph node, there is involvement of cervical lymph nodes, these patients have painless mass in the neck, and these patients give you history of restricted mouth opening or trismus. How we approach the patients of CA oral cavity? We discussed already. How we make the diagnosis? Biopsy. And what is the investigation of choice? We go for edge biopsy. How we are going to stage the malignancy? So investigation of choice for staging is MRI. So important point, it's common. So investigation of choice for diagnosis, it's edge biopsy. Okay. And second important point, investigation of choice for staging, right? And that's what is the MRI. Now if you have seen AIIMS and NEET paper, for the last 2 to 3 years there was 8th AJCC classification related to CA oral cavity, and this question was asked 2 to 3 times. So we have to discuss 8th AJCC TNM classification of CA oral cavity. So see, 8th AJCC TNM classification. Okay, in one of the exam TX, NX, MX was mentioned. What? TX, NX, MX. So TX means when tumor cannot be assessed, NX when lymph node cannot be assessed, MX when metastasis cannot be assessed. So this is the meaning. Clear? Second, you know that if TIS is there, TIS means carcinoma in situ. So these are common things. Now see the important points. First, we are going to discuss the tumor related staging. First, we are going to discuss the T staging. Okay, now see what is T1. When the size of tumor is up to 2 centimeter, and here you have to see the depth of invasion also. So size up to 2 centimeter and depth of invasion up to 5 millimeter. What is T2? If the size is up to 2 centimeter, then the depth of invasion should be more than 5 to 10 mm. Or second situation, if the size is more than 2 to 4 centimeter, then depth of invasion can be anything, any figure between, or it is up to 10 mm. So any depth of invasion up to 10 mm, if the size is more than 2 to 4 centimeter, it is included in T2. In T3, the size of tumor should be more than 4 centimeter and the depth of invasion should be more than 10 mm. Clear? This is T3. Now see the change here. The T4A for carcinoma lip and carcinoma oral cavity is different. So see what is the T4A for carcinoma lip. So in T4A of carcinoma lip, the tumor invades or involves cortical bone, inferior alveolar nerve, floor of mouth or skin of chin or nose. And what about T4A of oral cavity? Here the tumor invades cortical bone, mandible, maxillary sinus or skin of face. Clear? And the T4B is same for both. In T4B, if there is involvement of masticator space, pterygoid canal, skull base, and or encasement of internal carotid artery. So this is T staging. Now see the lymph node staging. Okay, so it is divided into N1, N2 and 3. What is N1? In N1 there is metastasis to single ipsilateral lymph node. Single ipsilateral lymph node and size up to 3 centimeter. And whenever there is metastasis to single ipsilateral lymph node but the size is more than 3 to 6 centimeter, then it is included in N2A. And in N2B there is presence of multiple or involvement of multiple ipsilateral lymph node. Here the size should not be more than 6 centimeter of any lymph node. So none should be more than 6 centimeter. So N2B, multiple lymph nodes are involved, multiple ipsilateral lymph node. What happens in N3A? In N3A, whenever the size of involved lymph node is more than 6 centimeter. So if there is metastasis to lymph node more than 6 centimeter, it is N3A. And what is N3B? Whether there is metastasis to single or multiple lymph node doesn't matter if it's having clinical extranodal extension. So if patient is having clinical extranodal extension, this is included in N3B. So this is lymph node staging, and the easiest is metastasis. M0, there is no metastasis. M0, no metastasis, and in M1 there is distant metastasis. Clear? So in M1 there is distant metastasis. So this is TNM classification. This is very important for AIIMS and NEET. 2 to 3 times questions were asked about this staging. Now we are going to discuss the management of carcinoma oral cavity. So see the basic principle which we are going to follow. If the patient is having T1, if the stage is T1 or T2, generally for T1 and T2, surgical excision is sufficient. So generally, there are exceptions, but generally surgical excision is sufficient. And if patient is having T3 and T4, for T3 and T4 malignancies, we go for surgery plus radiotherapy. Okay, so this principle we will be following in carcinoma oral cavity. Now coming to the other treatment options. So we have three treatment options for carcinoma oral cavity. First, we go for surgery. So what kind of surgery is done? Since most common type is squamous cell carcinoma, we go for wide local excision, and if we go for wide local excision, there is a defect, so we have to reconstruct the defect with flap. So the most important modality of treatment is surgical excision with reconstruction. Other treatment options are chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Okay, so what are the management options in CA oral cavity? Management options. The most important treatment modality is surgery with reconstruction. So what we have to go for? Surgery with reconstruction. Second is chemotherapy, and third is radiotherapy. These are the three options. Out of these three, which one is most important? So the most important modality, and that is surgery with reconstruction. Okay, so generally what surgery? We go for wide local excision and we go for reconstruction with flap. And we discussed that in head and neck reconstruction, what is the most commonly used flap? It is the PMMC flap, pectoralis major myocutaneous flap. So here we go for wide local excision with 2 cm margin, clear, followed by flap closure. So we go for flap closure, clear. So this is how we manage. Now one by one we are going to discuss what are the important flaps used. Most commonly used flap is PMMC flap. So in this patient you can see that this patient is having this defect, clear, and for this defect I am taking what? Pectoralis major myocutaneous flap. Okay, so this flap is used here for the reconstruction. So question is asked that this PMMC flap is based on which vessels? So it is based on pectoral branches of thoracoacromial vessels. This image based question was asked in AIIMS. So most important flap, it is PMMC flap. PMMC flap is the most commonly used flap for reconstruction of head and neck. So this is most commonly used flap for reconstruction of head and neck, and it is based on pectoral branches of thoracoacromial vessels. Thoracoacromial vessels. Clear? So here you can see the muscle. You can see this is pectoralis major. Okay, and it is based on these arteries. This is pectoral branch and it is used for reconstruction of head and neck. Now see this flap and tell me the name. This is the radial side and this is the ulnar side, and here you can see that I am going to take this flap. This flap is devascularized from donor site, revascularized at recipient bed. So this is free flap. And what kind of? This is radial forearm free flap. So what's the name of this flap? This is radial forearm. So radial forearm free flap. Okay, so it is free flap and it is based on, can you see which artery? So it is based on, its the name is radial forearm free flap. So it is based on which artery? Radial artery. So it is based on radial artery. Okay, and it is used for reconstruction of floor of mouth, buccal mucosa, base of tongue. So see what are the uses. So radial forearm free flap, it is used for reconstruction of floor of mouth, lateral tongue, even buccal mucosa, base of tongue and soft palate. Now see this image here. I am taking the flap from the lateral aspect of thigh, anterolateral aspect of thigh. So what is the name of this flap? Anterolateral thigh flap. The name of this flap, it is anterolateral thigh flap. Okay, and in short it is known as ALT flap. Clear? So this is anterolateral thigh flap. First question, that it is based on which vessels? So it is based on perforators of, you can see here, descending branch of lateral circumflex femoral artery. So it is based on perforating vessels of descending branch of lateral circumflex femoral artery. Now what is the use of this anterolateral thigh flap? See, in certain patients who are going to develop carcinoma tongue, sometimes we go for hemiglossectomy or total glossectomy. So after glossectomy we have to go for the reconstruction of tongue. So this ALT flap, here you can see this ALT flap is used for tongue reconstruction. So here you can see this is used for tongue reconstruction in this patient after hemiglossectomy. Clear? So what's the use and on which vessel it is based? It is based on perforating vessels of descending branch of lateral circumflex femoral artery. So what you have to remember, it is based on lateral circumflex femoral artery, which branches perforating vessels of descending branches, and it is used for reconstruction of tongue. So used for reconstruction of tongue. Okay, so after partial glossectomy, hemiglossectomy or total glossectomy. So reconstruction of tongue, which part? Lateral part, or sometimes we are going to reconstruct the total tongue. So lateral part of tongue reconstruction or total tongue reconstruction, we can use this ALT flap. There is another flap which is used for reconstruction of total tongue, and that is rectus abdominis flap. We discussed that this rectus abdominis flap can be used for reconstruction of breast. It can be used for reconstruction of tongue, and we discussed it is based on which artery? Deep inferior epigastric artery. So see the rectus abdominis flap. So here you can see that this is the rectus abdominis muscle flap, rectus abdominis flap, and it is based on which artery? Deep inferior epigastric artery. And see, this is the patient after total glossectomy. You can see here the total tongue reconstruction has been done. So what is the name of this flap? This is rectus abdominis flap. This is rectus abdominis flap. Okay, and this rectus abdominis flap, it is based on deep inferior epigastric artery. First important question, it is based on deep inferior epigastric artery, and it is used for reconstruction of total tongue after glossectomy. So used for, here you can see, reconstruction of total tongue. Okay, so these are the common flaps which we use in the malignancy of oral cavity. Now see, what are the chemotherapy options? So generally in CA oral cavity, we give the combination regimen of cisplatin and 5-fluorouracil, and this is the cornerstone or mainstay chemotherapy regimen. So what's the chemotherapy regimen given in CA oral cavity? So here we give the combination of cisplatin plus 5-fluorouracil. Clear? So this is the most preferred regimen, and this is the mainstay chemotherapy for head and neck malignancies. Now there are two terms which are asked: concurrent chemotherapy and concurrent chemoradiation. These two questions were asked many times. Both concurrent chemotherapy as well as concurrent chemoradiation are given in CA oral cavity. So important point you have to remember: concurrent chemotherapy and concurrent chemoradiation. Concurrent chemotherapy and concurrent chemoradiation, both of these are given in carcinoma oral cavity. The concurrent chemotherapy, it is based on cisplatin. So chemotherapy we discussed, it is based on cisplatin. Now if we are going to compare concurrent chemoradiation or radiotherapy alone, which one is preferred? Concurrent chemoradiation. Why? Because it is having survival advantage. So it is going to improve survival. It improves survival over radiation alone. That's why this one is preferred. improve survival over radiation alone. Clear? So these are the important points related to chemotherapy. Now see the radiotherapy. So what is the modality of radiotherapy which is used in C oral cavity? We give EBRT. What's EBRT? External beam radiotherapy. And what's the dose? We discussed that the therapeutic radiation exposure which is generally given in the malignancy, the range is 40 to 60 gray and it is given over a period of 4 to 6 weeks. In CA oral cavity, we give external beam radiotherapy. Here, the dose is 60 gray and it is given over the period of 6 weeks. So see, the radiotherapy. Important points related to radiotherapy in C oral cavity. First, most commonly used modality. So it is external beam radiotherapy. This is the most commonly used modality. Clear? Second important point, what's the dose? 60 gray. And this 60 gray, it's given over a period of 6 weeks. The most important aspect of radiotherapy is what? The complications of radiotherapy when we give it in carcinoma oral cavity. So what's the most common complication of radiotherapy if it's given in patients of C oral cavity? There is xerostomia. So see, what are the complications? This question was asked many times both in NEET as well as in AIIMS. Clear? So first, most common complication is xerostomia. Clear? There can be inflammation of mucosa, mucositis. There is altered taste, and that is dysgeusia. Dysgeusia can be temporary or permanent. So altered taste, and that is dysgeusia. And the question which is most frequently asked, and it is this complication, osteoradionecrosis. Clear? Osteoradionecrosis. So generally this osteoradionecrosis is seen in the patients who are having caries tooth in the radiation field. Clear? So what's the problem? It is generally related to caries tooth in radiation field. So if in the radiation field there is caries tooth, it is going to increase the risk of osteoradionecrosis. What's the problem here? Because of this radiotherapy, there is altered microcirculation of mandible as well as maxilla. And if there is altered microcirculation, what's the problem? There is decreased saliva production. So there is decreased saliva production because of altered microcirculation of mandible and maxilla. So how we are going to manage this osteoradionecrosis? First, the patient should be having good oral hygiene. There should be dental care, and we give hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So how we manage osteoradionecrosis? Good oral hygiene, dental care, and we give hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Clear? So this was related to the treatment aspect of C oral cavity. Now one by one we are going to discuss. First we are going to discuss the carcinoma lip. So in this patient you can see that the carcinoma is present over the lower lip. So generally in the lip, what is the most common site of carcinoma? Is the lower lip. Why? Lower lip is most common site in lip because this lower lip is more everted, and that's why it is exposed to sunlight. So there is greater exposure to ultraviolet radiation. And generally this carcinoma lip is more common in males. Why? Because males are involved in outdoor activities. So see the important points related to carcinoma lip. Okay. So first, what's the most common site? It's the lower lip. Why? Because lower lip is exposed to sunlight and it's exposed to ultraviolet radiation. It is more common in males. Why? Because males are involved in outdoor activities. Generally, in which decade? It is seen in 4th to 7th decade. Seen in 4th to 7th decade. Now see, generally these patients have this kind of swelling, growth, sometimes ulceration over the lower lip. Now we discussed that if the malignancy is arising from upper lip, there is lymph node involvement of one side. Why? Because here it is divided by philtrum. But if patient is having malignancy in the lower lip, what happens? Because of crisscross connection, there can be involvement of bilateral cervical lymph node. So here also there can be involvement of cervical lymph node. We discussed that lymph node metastasis is most common with which malignancy? Carcinoma tongue. And it is least common with which malignancy? Carcinoma lip. If carcinoma lip is not given in the option, then you have to go for carcinoma hard palate. So lymph node metastasis is least commonly associated with CLA. And generally these patients are coming to you with lymph node metastasis when the malignancy is highly advanced. Now which group can you see? Most commonly involved group, this one submental and this one submandibular. Okay, so clinical presentation we discussed, there is swelling or ulceration, clear. Generally if malignancy is in the lower lip, it can lead to bilateral lymph node involvement, and the most commonly involved group of lymph node only seen in advanced malignancies. Lymph node involvement is seen in advanced malignancies, and the involved group is 1A, that is submental, and 1B, and that's submandibular. Clear? So it's submental and submandibular. Clear? Rest of the things are very similar to any other malignancy, like investigation of choice for diagnosis, edge biopsy, investigation of choice for staging, MRI, treatment for T1, T2, surgery is sufficient almost. So surgery alone is sufficient in majority of cases, and for T3, T4 we give surgery plus radiotherapy. Okay, now see what kind of treatment is done in CLA. So treatment, if patient is having T1 and T2 tumors, here surgery alone, and if patient is having T3 and T4, here we go for surgery plus radiotherapy. Clear? Now what kind of surgery? If less than 1/3 of lip is involved, in that case you can go for V-shaped or W-shaped excision with primary closure. And if more than 1/3 of lip is involved, in that case you have to go for excision and you have to go for flap closure. And what is the most commonly used flap in lip reconstruction? So we use Abbe-Easterland's flap, and it is taken from upper lip based on superior labial artery. Okay, so see two situations. If 1/3 or less than 1/3 of lip is involved, clear, in that case we go for V-shaped or W-shaped excision. Clear? Plus primary closure. Now see how we do this V-shaped or W-shaped excision with primary closure. Here you can see carcinoma is involving less than 1/3 of lip, and that's why you can see what kind of excision is done here. Can you see W-shaped excision? And after this W-shaped excision, you can see I'm going for primary closure. Now see the second example. Here also you can notice that the malignancy is involving less than 1/3 of lip, and here what is the shape of excision? V-shaped excision, and after this V-shaped excision we are going for primary closure. Right? Now see the second situation. Whenever more than 1/3 of lip is involved, so the tumor is going to involve more than 1/3 of lip. Here we go for excision with flap reconstruction. So excision with flap reconstruction, and generally what is the most commonly used flap? It is Abbe-Easterland's flap. So in this patient you can see this is the malignancy involving more than 1/3 of lip. We are taking a flap from this upper lip. From this upper lip we are taking this flap. This part is excised and this part is used for reconstruction. It is based on superior labial artery. Clear? So this is flap taken from upper lip based on superior labial artery. Clear? So this is, what's the name? The name of this flap is Abbe-Easterland's flap. So the most commonly used flap Abbe Eastlander's flap, and it's based on superior labial artery. There are two kinds of flap which are used in lip reconstruction. One is cross lip flap. Classical example of cross lip flap is this Abbe Eastlander's flap, and there is circumoral advancement flap. And what are the names? The circumoral advancement flaps are Karpandzik flap and Webster Bernard flap. So what are the flaps used for lip reconstruction? First, cross lip flap, and the second is circumoral advancement flap. So this is circumoral advancement flap. Okay, what are the examples? Here it is Abbe Eastlander's flap, and we discussed it is based on superior labial artery, and the circumoral advancement flaps are, first is Karpandzik flap, and the second is Webster Bernard flap. Webster Bernard flap. Clear? So this is how we reconstruct the lip. And we discussed that if the tumor is T3 and T4, so apart from surgery we have to use the radiotherapy. Now see carcinoma tongue. So in this picture you can see this is the site of malignancy, and this is the most common site of carcinoma tongue. First, two important questions. What is the most common site of carcinoma oral cavity worldwide? It is tongue. And in tongue, what is the most common site? So if you see the diagram, this is the tongue. Clear? This is anterior 1/3, this is middle 1/3, and this is posterior 1/3. So it is generally arising from the junction of middle 1/3 and posterior 1/3, and where exactly? The lateral aspect. So here you can see it is exactly located on the lateral aspect of junction of middle 1/3 and posterior 1/3. So this is the most common site of CA tongue. So two important points. Carcinoma tongue. First, it's the most common site of CA oral cavity. Most common site of CA oral cavity worldwide. Clear? Second, what is the most common site in tongue? So most common site is lateral border of junction of middle and posterior third. Middle and posterior third. Clear? Another important point we discussed, that in CA oral cavity, which malignancy is having maximum risk of lymph node metastasis? It is carcinoma tongue. And from carcinoma tongue, which group of lymph nodes are most commonly involved? So this is level 2, and the level 2 is upper jugular. So it is most commonly associated with lymph node metastasis. And which group of lymph node? It's the level 2, and that's upper jugular. Upper jugular. Clear? Now see the presentation. You can see the presentation of this patient. Similar presentation is there. Most of the patients are having ulcer in the tongue, and because of this ulceration, what is the problem? These patients are not able to tolerate hot and spicy food. Clear? So what is the most common type? It is the ulcerative variety. What is the most common presentation? Ulcer in the tongue. Clinical features. So very important point. Most common type is ulcerative variety. It is ulcerative, and since it is ulcerative variety, clear, so most common presentation is ulcer which is not healing. So long history of ulcer which fails to heal. And the second problem, these patients are not able to tolerate hot and spicy food. Clear? Hot and spicy food. Right? Now, what is the investigation protocol? Here also investigation of choice for diagnosis is edge biopsy. Investigation of choice for staging is MRI. And see the treatment. Treatment depends on the location of tumor and involvement of the tongue. Now imagine that this is the tongue, clear? And if patient is having T1, so for T1 what we do, we go for partial glossectomy. So for T1 we go for T1 we perform partial glossectomy with primary closure. So see the treatment, T1 partial glossectomy plus primary closure. Okay, now see, if the patient is having T2, for T2 we are going to perform the hemiglossectomy. So half of this tongue is removed. So here you can see we perform hemiglossectomy and we give radiotherapy. So here for T2 we perform hemiglossectomy clear, and we give radiotherapy. If it is T3, in T3 imagine that this is the tongue, this is the oral tongue. So in T3 we are going to perform the total glossectomy. So we are going to remove the tongue, not only tongue, we are going to perform the mandibulectomy. So T3 we perform total glossectomy plus mandibulectomy. So for T3 this was the tongue which was removed. So for T3 total glossectomy plus mandibulectomy is done. So it's a total glossectomy plus mandibulectomy, clear? And if T4 is there, apart from this total glossectomy, mandibulectomy, we have to perform MRND. MRND is modified radical neck dissection. We have to perform laryngectomy and we have to give radiotherapy. So this is extensive treatment. So if patient is having T4, so here we perform total glossectomy plus mandibulectomy, clear, plus we perform modified radical neck dissection MRND plus laryngectomy and we give radiotherapy. Laryngectomy plus we give radiotherapy. Why? To prevent the post-operative recurrence. Now see what the problem in carcinoma tongue, that in majority of cases the recurrences are seen within 2 years. Clear? Now see, if there is recurrence, okay, and you have performed only partial glossectomy, you have given radiotherapy. So after partial glossectomy and radiotherapy, recurrence occurs, then you have to perform total glossectomy. And if recurrence occurs after surgery in which radiotherapy is not given, so in post-operative period we have to add radiotherapy. So majority of recurrence are going to occur within 2 years. And if there is recurrence, we have two treatment options. What? First, we can go for total glossectomy. So if in the patient only partial glossectomy was done and radiotherapy was given, we can go for total glossectomy. And if only surgery was done, glossectomy, we can go for radiotherapy. So this is how we manage the patients of CA tongue. Now in this image you can see that there is growth involving this buccal mucosa or cheek, and we discussed what is the most common site of carcinoma oral cavity in India. It is buccal mucosa or cheek. Why? Because you have seen certain people are using khani. So what happens, there is tobacco leaves and they are going to mix it with lime and they make a quid and they used to put it here. So that's why it's the alveobuccal complex which is most commonly involved. So this is carcinoma buccal mucosa. Carcinoma buccal mucosa. It is also known as carcinoma cheek. Okay, so it is involving the inner aspect of cheek, that is buccal mucosa. So this is the most common site of carcinoma oral cavity, CA oral cavity in India. Why? We discussed because the people are using tobacco leaves, they are going to mix it with lime and putting a quid here. Because of persistent exposure, what's the problem? There is increased risk of this malignancy. Now what is the presentation? These patients are having the growth over buccal mucosa or this aspect of cheek. Now see the presentation. So patients are coming to us with this kind of growth over the buccal mucosa. In these growths, there is minimal pain. Sometimes there is obstruction of Stenson's duct. You must be knowing that Stenson's duct is for that parotid. So whenever there is compression or obstruction of this Stenson's duct, patients might be coming to you with parotid enlargement also during meals. And which group of lymph node is involved in this particular malignancy? So level 1 was submental, submandibular and upper jugular. So level 1 and level 2 lymph nodes are involved. So here there is involvement of level 1 and level 2 lymph node. What's the clinical presentation? There is lesion with minimal pain. So lesion with minimal pain, and it can lead to parotid enlargement. So patient might give you history of parotid enlargement. In which patients parotid enlargement can be seen? When there is obstruction of Stenson's duct. So investigation of choice for diagnosis is same, edge biopsy. For staging it's MRI. And what's the treatment principle we follow? For T1, T2 we go for surgery. T3, T4 we go for surgery plus radiotherapy. So see the treatment for T1 and T2 we go for surgery. And what is the preferred modality? Wide local excision with 2 cm margin. So wide local excision with 2 cm margin. And if it's T3, T4, apart from surgery, we give radiotherapy. So we go for surgery plus radiotherapy. In this patient, you can see this growth involving the hard palate. So here is the growth. So there is growth involving hard palate, and this patient is having carcinoma or cancer of hard palate. Now see, there is some variation. We discussed that in oral cavity, what is the most common type of malignancy? Histological type, it is squamous cell carcinoma. But in hard palate, squamous cell carcinoma is rare. Hard palate contains minor salivary gland. So in majority of cases, the malignancy is arising from minor salivary gland. Clear? And what is the most common type of malignancy seen in minor salivary gland? Adenoid cystic carcinoma. So in majority of cases, you will find what? Adenoid cystic carcinoma. One variation. Second variation, we discussed the malignancy which is most commonly associated with lymph node metastasis, carcinoma tongue. Least commonly associated with lymph node metastasis, CA lip, followed by carcinoma hard palate. So in carcinoma hard palate also, lymph node involvement is rare and it is only seen in advanced cases. Okay, so see the important points. This is carcinoma hard palate. Clear? And squamous cell carcinoma is rare. Why? Because it is arising from minor salivary glands. So in majority of cases, it is arising from minor salivary glands. So what's the type generally? It's adenoid cystic carcinoma. Okay, squamous cell carcinoma is rare. So you have to remember that squamous cell carcinoma, it's rare. Clear? Now what is the risk factor here? You have seen in the rural areas that the people who are smokers, especially the BD smoker, they are putting the burning end inside the mouth first and then they smoke. So this is known as reverse smoking, where the burning end is kept in mouth for some period of time. So reverse smoking is strongly associated with what? Carcinoma hard palate. So what is the risk factor? One of the strong risk factor is reverse smoking. Clear? It's the reverse smoking. Now what is the presentation? So here you can see that there is painless mass in the hard palate. So painless mass in the hard palate means on the roof of oral cavity. These malignancies are well differentiated and sometimes there is ulceration also. So what happens? The most common variety is ulcerative variety. So clinical features. There is painless mass in the roof of mouth. Painless mass in the roof of mouth or in the hard palate. It is well differentiated. The most common type or variety is ulcerative variety. It's the ulcerative variety. We discussed lymph node metastasis is rare, and if there is involvement of lymph nodes, which levels are involved? Generally involvement of level 1 and level 2. So lymph node involvement, it's rare, and if it is involved, which group is involved? Level 1 and level 2. Clear? So we go for diagnosis. How? We go for edge biopsy. Investigation of choice for staging is MRI. Now see the treatment. It's a bit different. If the tumor is small, we have to excise the tumor with underlying bone. So some part of maxilla should be removed. So if the patient is having small tumor, in that case, excision of tumor, what we go for? Excision of tumor plus underlying bone means some part of maxilla is removed. Clear? And if large tumor is there, in those cases we go for maxillectomy. Second situation, if large tumor is there, for that we go for maxillectomy. Clear? And in advanced cases, we have to give radiotherapy to prevent the recurrence. So generally we add radiotherapy to prevent recurrence in advanced malignancies. Now here you can see the malignancy is involving the lower alveolus. So this is lower alveolar cancer. What kind of malignancy? This is lower alveolar cancer. Okay, now see certain principles we follow here. If the location of this alveolar cancer is over the lateral aspect, here only ipsilateral selective neck dissection is required. But if it is located anteriorly, we perform bilateral selective neck dissection. So see, if there is lateral tumor, for lateral tumor, we perform ipsilateral selective neck dissection. And if there is anterior tumor, so for anterior tumor, we have to perform bilateral selective neck dissection. Okay, now see this important image. Suppose this is the mandible. Clear? And the tumor is lower alveolar. So whenever there is involvement of mandible, generally we have to go for segmental resection of mandible. And if you perform this kind of segmental resection, the continuity of mandible is not maintained. So after segmental resection, we have to go for mandibular reconstruction. So if there is bone invasion, in cases of bone invasion, what we do? Segmental resection of mandible. Segmental resection. That is also known as segmental mandibulectomy. Clear? And after this segmental resection of mandible, we have to perform the reconstruction. So for better functional and cosmetic outcome, primary or immediate reconstruction is preferred over delayed reconstruction. So if we go for reconstruction, generally primary or immediate reconstruction is preferred. It is preferred over delayed reconstruction. Clear? For better functional and cosmetic outcome. So this is how we manage the patients of lower alveolar cancer. Lots of questions are asked related to the mandibulectomy. One is marginal mandibulectomy and one is segmental mandibulectomy. See how it's done and which part of mandible is removed. Now see these images. In the first image you can see that there is partial excision of superior portion of mandible in a vertical plane, and this is known as marginal mandibulectomy. And when entire segment of mandible is removed, when the entire segment of mandible is removed, this is segmental mandibulectomy. Now in this case you can see in marginal mandibulectomy, the continuity of mandible is maintained, and that's why it is also known as conservative mandibulectomy. Okay, so what's the other name of marginal mandibulectomy? It's also known as conservative mandibulectomy. And here what we are going to excise? Here there is partial excision of which portion of mandible? superior portion of mandible. Superior portion of mandible. Clear? And in which plane? In vertical plane. In vertical plane. Clear? So this is the marginal mandibulectomy, and in the segmental mandibulectomy, one segment or entire segment of mandible is removed. So entire segment is removed, and that's why there is discontinuity. And if discontinuity is there, what is required here? Reconstruction is required. So it leads to discontinuity, and that's why what's required here? Reconstruction is required. So we require reconstruction here. Now in marginal mandibulectomy, what we are going to excise here? Inner cortical surface and part of medullary cavity. So what is excised here? Here we are going to excise the inner cortical surface, okay, and part of medullary cavity. Part of medullary cavity. Clear? This is famous question. It is asked frequently in NEET and DNB, that what are the indications of marginal mandibulectomy and what are the indications of segmental mandibulectomy. So see the indications of marginal mandibulectomy. What are the indications? So when the tumor is within 1 centimeter of mandible, within 1 centimeter of mandible, or tumor just abuts the periosteum but where there is no invasion. So if it is just touching the periosteum without direct invasion, so if there is no direct invasion and the tumor is within 1 centimeter, we go for marginal mandibulectomy. And what are the indications of segmental mandibulectomy? So whenever there is invasion of medullary space, so if there is invasion of medullary space, we have to go for segmental mandibulectomy. Or if a patient is edentulous, there is no teeth and there is occlusal surface, and when tumor is fixed to occlusal surface, so tumor fixation to occlusal surface in which patients? In edentulous patient. Sometimes there is involvement of mandible via mental foramen or mandibular foramen, and whenever these foramens are involved and there is invasion of mandible, in that case also we have to go for what? Segmental mandibulectomy. So these are the indications of segmental mandibulectomy, and after segmental mandibulectomy we have to go for reconstruction. Now we are going to discuss mandibular reconstruction. And for mandibular reconstruction, what are the grafts we are going to use? We use iliac crest, we use fibula and scapula. Okay. So what are the grafts used for mandibular reconstruction? We use iliac crest, we use fibula graft and scapula graft. Okay. So see, these grafts are based on which vessels? So first question, that this iliac crest graft is based on, it is based on deep circumflex iliac artery. Fibula graft is based on peroneal artery, and what about scapula graft? It is based on subscapular artery. So iliac crest graft, it is based on deep circumflex iliac artery, deep circumflex iliac artery. This fibula graft, it is based on peroneal artery, and scapula graft, it is based on subscapular artery, Clear? Now see, all these three grafts are used for mandibular reconstruction in dentate patients. So all these three are used for mandibular reconstruction in dentate patients, and in edentulous patients, which grafts are used? So we use fibula and scapula graft. So fibula and scapula graft, it is used in edentulous patients. Clear? Whereas all the three are used in dentate patients. Another very important question, that which graft is preferred for mandibular reconstruction in dentate patient and which one is preferred in edentulous patient. So for dentate patients, most preferred graft is iliac crest. So this iliac crest is most preferred graft, most preferred in dentate patients. So for mandibular reconstruction, it is most preferred in dentate patients, and fibula graft, this is most preferred in edentulous patients, in edentulous patient. Clear? What is the important point related to scapula graft? That apart from mandibular reconstruction, if there is soft tissue defect also and you need a graft, then you can use scapula. So scapula graft can also be used if patient is having large soft tissue defect. So if patient is having large soft tissue defect, we can use the scapula graft. Okay. So in this image you can see this part of mandible has to be reconstructed, this green colored part, and we are taking the graft. Can you see? We are taking the graft from iliac crest, and here you can see this kind of reconstruction has been done by this iliac crest graft. Clear? And we discussed that it is based on deep circumflex iliac artery. Now see the second picture. Here also you can see that this much of mandible has to be reconstructed, and we are taking which graft? You can see we are taking fibula for reconstruction, and this fibula graft is used. Clear? And it is based on which artery? Peroneal artery. Another important point which we discussed, that for dentate patient, which one is preferred graft? Iliac crest. And for edentulous patient, which one is preferred? It is the fibula. Now see this image, and what you can see here, you can see that there is growth in relation to maxillary sinus, which is involving the right side of nasal cavity. So what is this actually? This is carcinoma maxillary sinus. And you know what is the most common site of paranasal malignancy? It's the maxillary sinus. Clear? So this is carcinoma maxillary sinus. We are going to discuss in detail. Carcinoma maxillary sinus. Now see the first question, that maxillary sinus, it's the most common site of paranasal malignancy. So first question, it's the most common site of paranasal malignancy. Simple. Okay, generally it is more common in males. Okay, and it is seen in 4th to 6th decade. So it's more common in males, seen in 4th to 6th decade. Clear? Now see what are the manifestations. So if malignancy is arising from maxillary sinus over a period of time, what happens? Whenever the growth is involving the nasal cavity, patient gives you the history of nasal stuffiness. Patient gives the history of blood-stained discharge, and whenever there is involvement of nasolacrimal duct, patient gives the history of what? Epiphora. Apart from this, patient is having complaints of, a patient is having facial pain, facial paresthesia. So these are the clinical features. So see what are the clinical features. First, patient gives you the history of nasal stuffiness. Okay, what kind of discharge? So there is blood-stained discharge. Blood-stained discharge. Clear? There is facial pain, facial paresthesia. Facial pain or paresthesia. Clear? And whenever there is obstruction of nasolacrimal duct, patient is having epiphora. So there is epiphora. Okay. These are the clinical features. Now see, generally lymph node metastasis is uncommon in carcinoma maxilla. So in carcinoma maxillary sinus, lymph node involvement is uncommon. And if there is involvement of lymph node, which group of lymph nodes is involved? Mandibular lymph nodes are involved. So generally lymph node involvement, it's uncommon. And if lymph node is involved, generally which group? It's going to involve mandibular lymph node. Okay, how we are going to make the diagnosis? So generally diagnosis is made by CT. And what's the treatment? apart from surgery, we give radiotherapy also. Okay, so it is diagnosed by CT scan, and for best results, what we go for? We go for surgery plus radiotherapy. Now see this incision and tell me the name. So this is the incision, and the name of this incision is Weber-Ferguson incision. And this Weber-Ferguson incision is used for which malignancy? Carcinoma maxillary sinus. But in all cases, we are not using this Weber-Ferguson incision. For which cases? See here, if the maxillary sinus malignancy is involving this infraorbital nerve, suppose there is involvement of this infraorbital nerve, or whenever there is involvement of this floor of orbit. So when this floor of orbit is involved or involvement of infraorbital nerve, in those cases this Weber-Ferguson incision is used. So first important question, name, it's known as Weber-Ferguson incision. Okay, and it is used for carcinoma maxillary sinus. In which cases? Used for carcinoma maxillary sinus. Not in all cases. The cases in which there is involvement of floor of orbit. So if there is involvement of floor of orbit, or there is involvement of infraorbital nerve. Involvement of infraorbital nerve. So this is Weber-Ferguson incision used for carcinoma maxillary sinus. There is another procedure or another operation which is frequently asked in relation to carcinoma oral cavity. And what's the name? It's commando operation. So what's the name of this operation? This is commando operation. Okay. Now see, for which malignancy this commando operation is done. So it is for oral cavity malignancies in which there is involvement of mandible or malignancies infiltrating the floor of mouth. That's why in this case, apart from removal of primary malignancy, we go for hemimandibulectomy, we go for removal of floor of mouth, and we go for radical neck dissection. So see first, what's the full form? COM means combined. So what's the full form? It's combined mandibulectomy. So this is combined mandibulectomy and neck dissection operation. Neck dissection operation. Clear? So the term is self-explanatory. We perform mandibulectomy. So what kind of mandibulectomy is done? It's hemimandibulectomy. We have to dissect the floor of mouth, and there is neck dissection operation. So what kind of radical neck dissection? Imagine the malignancy is in the tongue and it is involving the mandible. It is fixed to mandible and it is infiltrating the floor of mouth. So what is the surgery done? So if it's carcinoma tongue involving mandible and infiltrating the floor of mouth, then we will go for total glossectomy plus hemimandibulectomy, clear, plus resection or removal of floor of mouth. So removal of floor of mouth. Okay, and what else? We perform radical neck dissection. Clear? So these are the components. It's a radical surgery with increased morbidity and mortality, performed for carcinoma oral cavity. There are three other questions which are asked in relation to oral cavity. One, dental cyst, dentigerous cyst, and ameloblastoma. Now see, dental cyst is in relation to normally erupted tooth. Dentigerous cyst is in relation to, or cyst contains unerupted tooth. And ameloblastoma is a tumor. So it's a benign tumor of ameloblast. What is ameloblast? It is odontogenic epithelium. So ameloblastoma is most common odontogenic tumor. Now see the important points related to three conditions. So three conditions which are asked. frequently. First is dental cyst. It's in relation to normally erupted tooth. Second is dentigerous cyst. It is in relation to unerupted tooth. And ameloblastoma, it's a tumor. So benign tumor arising from ameloblast. One by one we are going to discuss. Now here you can see the cyst is going to develop at the apex of caries tooth with necrotic pulp. Clear? And in this case you can see this cyst is going to contain what? Unerupted tooth. So one by one we are going to discuss. Dental cyst, it develops at apex of caries tooth. Clear? With necrotic pulp. So apex of caries tooth with necrotic pulp. Clear? And what is the most common site? It is most commonly seen in upper jaw. Most common site is, this is a question, it is upper jaw. Okay, and on X-ray what you are going to notice? You are going to notice the circular radiolucent area in relation to normally erupted tooth, and you will notice that the margins are sclerotic. So we are going to make the diagnosis on X-ray. And what are the findings in dental cyst on X-ray? There is circular radiolucent area. Circular radiolucent area. Clear? And it is having sclerotic margins. Okay. So there is circular radiolucent area in relation to normally erupted tooth and sclerotic margins. Now here, dentigerous cyst, it is in relation to unerupted tooth. It is in relation to unerupted tooth. That's why you can see the cyst contains unerupted tooth. So here, cyst contains unerupted tooth. And what is the most common site? It's the lower third molar. The most common site of dentigerous cyst is the lower third molar. Okay, how it looks like? So here you can see this is how the cyst looks like, and you can see that this is unerupted tooth and this is the cyst wall. Clear? So cyst contains unerupted tooth. On X-ray you are going to see that there is unilocular cyst and there is soap bubble appearance. So again we can make the diagnosis on X-ray. Clear? And what is the typical appearance? There is unilocular cyst and there is soap bubble appearance. Soap bubble appearance. Right? Now see the third one, ameloblastoma. So this is the benign tumor, and the term is self-explanatory. Benign tumor arising from ameloblast. Arising from ameloblast. And what is ameloblast? It's a normal odontogenic epithelium. It means this is the most common odontogenic tumor. So this is most common odontogenic tumor. Okay, and what is the most common location? Angle or ramus of mandible. So here the most common location of ameloblastoma is the angle or ramus of mandible. So angle or ramus of mandible. Clear? So these are the important points related to dental cyst, dentigerous cyst, ameloblastoma. So this is all about oral cavity.